Hello and welcome back to a belated episode of The Hard Fowl. I'm your host, Pearson Fowler, and with me as always, Collyn from Gamecock Central. He and I were both very eager to talk about South Carolina's exciting, sort of unpleasant in terms of the watching experience, win for South Carolina on Wednesday night over the Arkansas Razorbacks, the number 28 team in the net, a win on the road, one of the toughest places to play in the country, a huge win for South Carolina. And those of you that have subscribe to the podcast. First of all, we appreciate it. For those of you that haven't, rate, review, subscribe. But for those of you that are subscribed, you know that we have been pretty good about rolling on Tuesdays and Thursdays on this thing. You know, get a little Saturday recap on Tuesday, plus some Wednesday preview, and then the opposite of that on Thursday. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, this podcast, you may even be listening to it this weekend, but this podcast didn't drop until Friday. What the heck's going on? Well, it's a little bit of an embarrassing story. We were supposed to record at about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and Collyn, because he's always on it, texted me and said, hey, I'm a couple minutes early. You want to record early? And I said something to the effect of, I'm currently enduring some embarrassing and extremely uncomfortable intestinal distress, laying on my floor. So I generally eat pretty well. I'm pretty healthy diet. And I've maybe been going a little too far in the last couple of weeks, as I've been trying to see out the remainder of January eating no refined sugar and no alcohol. And it hasn't been that hard. Like, I haven't been craving it overly for most of that time. But I guess I'm getting to the end. I know that the end is tomorrow, in fact, Saturday, February 1st. And so the sweet craving has been creeping back in, and I've just been looking for ways to replace it. So I've been eating a lot of, like, RX bars and Lara bars, and these, you know, they're basically like dried fruit and nut bars that are pretty sweet and like close enough that they satisfy my craving. And on top of that, like for lunch, a lot of days I'll just make a smoothie. It'll be like, you know, cucumber and spinach and banana and like yogurt, a little bit of cinnamon or something like that. So a lot of spinach. And then this week, Monday night, I just cooked a bunch and I've been eating leftovers. And it was chicken, fine, but then also a bunch of spinach and Brussels sprouts. So a lot of cruciferous vegetables, a lot of fiber in the dried fruit, a lot of fiber in the nuts. And point is, I've just been eating a lot of fiber. Like Wednesday, I had an RX bar and 2 Lara bars. And then Tuesday, I think I had an RX bar and a Lara bar. And at about 2 o'clock yesterday, I just got stricken with like the worst and most peculiar pain. It was a stomach ache, but it was like kind of above my belly button. And it was awful. It was like a kind of a, I mean, it wasn't a sharp pain exactly, but it wasn't dull. But it was really intense. It was really constant. I mean, it was like really uncomfortable. It didn't hurt so much as it was uncomfortable. It hurt to stand. It hurt to sit. I didn't know what the problem was. So, of course, I do what any 26-year-old man probably does in this situation. I called my mom. Yeah. I said, Mom, what's going on? What, did my appendix rupture? Like, why am I, like, what's going on? And, you know, I told her that I've been eating a lot of, like, RX bars and a lot of spinach and stuff lately. And she was like, oh, you probably just have, like, a really insane gas buildup. So go get some Gas X. And I was like, okay. So I hobbled to my car at, like, you know, a little after 2, drove to CVS. I also called my girlfriend, who is also a mom. And so, you know, got to consult all the moms in my life because they just are good in situations like this. And she's like, get some seltzer, get a heating pad, put that on your stomach, which I thought sounded a little bit silly, but I'll get to that later. Lay on your back and like pull your knees to your chest and then do like some kind of yoga moves like the downward dog and then just kind of like, you know, basically move it around. So all that to say, we couldn't record yesterday because I spent 2 hours yesterday afternoon just laying on my floor, pounding Perrier with a tiny little space heater just like pointed at my stomach as if I were like incubating something in my belly. And I feel better now. I felt better by like, you know, 5 o'clock yesterday. But
system reset, for lack of a word.
It was really embarrassing. And it's like, body, I'm trying to give you good food, like fruit and nuts and spinach, trying to be extra healthy, trying to be good to you. What the hell? Why do you hate me?
See, this is why you just stick to a pizza and beer diet.
I know.
This is why, I mean, I have never had that problem probably since I got into college. I can't remember the last time I had it.
That's good.
Because I live on a pizza and beer diet.
Yeah. The benefits of that, I was like, yeah, I'm only eating chicken fingers from here on out. So.
Yeah, no, fried food all the way.
Yep.
Are you one of those guys that's like pathetic when he's sick? Like when he's got like a stomach ache or a cold or something?
You know, I used to be really, really pitiful when I got sick. I'd like to think I'm less so now.
Oh, I'm still.
But yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't even say I was sick yesterday. I was just like so uncomfortable and just like
even when I'm uncomfortable,
laying on my floor.
Even when I'm uncomfortable, it's I am woe is me,
Mm-hmm.
world's ending.
Yeah.
Like calling my fiance, telling her to like bring me soup and like all this stuff that I don't need, but I just want to see if she'd do it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I've kind of gone the other way a little bit where I'm really stubborn and I'm like, no, like I don't need anything. I'll be fine. I'll get better. I'll do it myself. That's like the last couple years. It has more to do with me being stubborn than me like not being pitiful.
Oh, but like I could break my leg and still go into work the next day. Those are the ones where it's like I'm fine, like keep moving. But when I have like a cold or like a stomach ache, it's like no, like I'm dead to the world for that point.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. If you're gonna gut it out through like the serious ailments and injuries, you deserve to get your time off when you just have a cold or a little sore throat or something like that. So
I pulled a tooth. I had a tooth pulled day before opening day 2 years ago.
Oh really?
Went to a press conference the same day and then did a live hit the next morning at like 6 a.m. for a TV station.
Oh my gosh, was your mouth all swollen? And
it was weird. So like they give you pain medication obviously for it. This is a wild story. And so I take the pain medication before bed, but the last thing I'd eaten was like at 4 p.m. Like I had some mac and cheese because it's taking I eat a whole lot of solid foods, creamy and liquid diet. So I'm on pain medication, no food in my stomach. I hop up at 6 a.m.
Oh no!
To take a shower. I don't remember the shower. I don't remember laying on my floor.
Oh.
Like I wake up at like 7 a.m. and I have to like hurry to get to Founders Park for a live hit for a TV show. And I mean, it was brutal.
Yikes!
Yeah, that's a fun story. That was Mark Kingston's opening day. So
oh, really?
So Mark, if you're listening to this, that was the adventure that I was going. I asked him like a couple questions with like bloody gauze in my mouth the day before, and
golly,
that's my sick story.
So moral of the story: you're a trooper. Also, moral of the story:
you're a trooper.
If you're I didn't
you
do
handled
anything.
it.
I just laid on my floor and just burped for 2 hours.
Yeah.
This is so much more information than anybody listening to this podcast wanted or expected to hear. I'm assuming that at least half of you have just sort of hit the fast forward button until we stop talking about this. So all that to say, I apologize that this podcast is late. It's because I'm an idiot.
We'll put in the time where we actually start talking about basketball. And you can like fast forward to it.
We'll timestamp this like 7 minutes or whatever it is. But importantly, I was sad that this was late because I was excited to talk about Carolina's 79-77 win over Arkansas. As I mentioned, a huge win on the road against the number 28 team in the net. That's a quad one win. Very, 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 very solidly quad one win. South Carolina's third of the season. A game that Carolina didn't need to win, and now that they have, they're sort of out front. They have 3 straight winnable games, starting at home against Missouri, then on the road against Ole Miss, and then they have Georgia. I can't remember if that's in Athens or in Columbia.
It's in Athens.
That one's at Athens, and then the home stand a little bit later in the season. But Carolina now has a chance to go on a little bit of a run, and for the first time since I won't even say since the Virginia game, for the first time this season, South Carolina is a little bit ahead because the Virginia game was kind of making up for the Boston loss, and then you immediately lose to Stetson, and the Kentucky loss is kind of making up for the Stetson loss. And now, again, for the first time, they're sitting here at 12-8, 4-3 in the conference with a lot of winnable games left down the stretch. Carolina is not in pole position, but in the best position they have been, at least since conference play started.
Yeah, you don't want to say they're in the driver's seat, but they're kind of climbing over the center console at this point, You look at the SEC standings, I mean, it's a cluster right now, but you have, I'm looking at it right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams at 4-3 in the conference. It is as wide open as you can get it. There is, if things break right for South Carolina, and they're only 2 games behind Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. With the tiebreaker. So there's, and the back half of your schedule is very, very favorable to you outside of really 3 games with Mississippi State,
2 Mississippi States, and then LSU.
So,
yeah, I mean, you got to win against a team that, if projections continue the way they're going, will be in the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
You've now beaten, I mean, depending on how Virginia and Clemson do, you could have beaten now 3 or 4 tournament teams in the same season. So this might be the most impressive win to date for South Carolina, outside of maybe the Kentucky win. But to go on the road in that environment and not get good performances from Jermaine, from Justin, from Keyshawn, and still win, that says a lot about this team, and it says a lot about what they can be moving down this stretch.
This was kind of the opposite of the Vanderbilt game, where there wasn't a ton to talk about in the Vanderbilt game. There was a ton to talk about in this Arkansas game. As you mentioned, a lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of ugly. We're going to break it down that way for Carolina. Also worth mentioning, I meant to say this off the top, and it's just so unusual. South Carolina did not have a wire-to-wire win against Vanderbilt, and it felt like they could have. What were the odds that this was the wire-to-wire win that South Carolina was going to get this week?
It's amazing. I mean, the fact that I can't state enough how, like, this is a fringe top 25 team, that they were receiving votes in the AP poll. They're a 15-win team right now, and at this late into the year. So they hung with Kentucky. They're a good team, and to come out and just bully your way to a win, it was not pretty, but you bullied your way to a win against a team that, for all intents and purposes, could finish top 4 in the league. So you got to feel good about this if you're South Carolina. Especially you got to feel good about the momentum you're building. I mean, they've won, 4 of the last 5 games?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think a lot of people are talking about that. You've won 4 of your last 5 with some pretty damn good wins in there. So this is a South Carolina team that's kind of turning a corner.
And all that while still not playing their best basketball, I think it's fair to say. Now, they got good contributions, and we're going to talk about some of that. In fact, we're going to start with the good. A.J. Lawson, who has been finding his stroke a little bit more confidently, had what Frank Martin called his best game of the season, certainly his best game since SEC play started. 19 points, very efficient, 8 of 13 shooting, 3 of 7 from three-point land, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and importantly, second game in a row, just 1 turnover for AJ. Yes. That's kind of the key. Not only is he playing freer and a little more aggressively, but he's doing it smarter than he has the entire year, maybe his entire career, just in terms of not putting the ball in jeopardy. And that was kind of the centerpiece of what propelled South Carolina to victory for me on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think that you look at his efficiency numbers, and he's shooting over 50% for his last 4 games. So he's taking smart shots. He's knocking them down, which is something he had not done. I mean, this is one of those things where AJ's kind of, as the team's going and they're figuring out their identity, AJ's settling into a role, and it's off the ball. It's throw him in a ball screen and let him attack the rim and free him up for some open threes. And he finished with his highest offensive rating of the year since Boston. So Boston, I think he had a 129. He finished with 123. First time in back-to-back games he's had an offensive efficiency over 120 this season. So this is an A.J. Lawson that's kind of figuring out his game, and I think I saw it on the message board, and I kind of agree with it. He looked like an NBA player last night, or whatever, Wednesday night. This is Friday morning. He looked like an NBA player, and so that's huge for South Carolina. If they can get a talented guy like that playing good basketball to mix it in with a Trey Hannibal, who I'm sure we'll talk about, a Keyshawn Bryant when he's playing well, a Jermaine Kustar when he's playing well, Justin Minaya, Mike Kotsar, who I think had a very, very quietly good game, and he should have against Arkansas. If you pair all that stuff together, this is not a team I would really want to face in late February and in the conference tournament.
No, especially in conference play, in tournament play, both conference tournament and NCAA tournament. I think the referees are a little more willing to swallow the whistle, which certainly helps South Carolina. One, because they foul so damn much, and the other part of it is they don't want to be fouled because they're such a horrendous free throw shooting team, and we're going to get to that a little bit later in the podcast. But it's kind of a hallmark of Frank Martin. It's a very different team than the team that went to the Final Four, and obviously we're a long way away from having that conversation. But given that South Carolina is in position now where you look at the rest of their games, they have a path. They have a pretty comfortable path to 20 wins should they take care of business in the games that they are supposed to. And to your point, when you say driver's seat, you said driver's seat earlier, and I meant to mention this, kind of, but they are 100% in control of their own destiny in terms of claiming the 4 seed and another, which will be the fourth in 5 years, double bye in the SEC tournament. Mississippi State's ahead of them. Alabama's ahead of them. They get to play Alabama. They play Mississippi State twice. They have an opportunity to leapfrog those teams. And so in that respect, they are in control of their own destiny. And getting that double bye in the SEC, I think some people are like, well, you miss out on the early rounds opportunities to get wins. You're automatically playing a team that's like a little bit harder, that has advanced to 1 or 2 rounds in the SEC tournament. But I think, that kind of stuff could possibly factor into a tiebreaker. So I'm with you. This is not a team that I don't think people are really excited to see late in the season, especially if AJ continues his upward trajectory and finishes the season playing like the guy that people were expecting to see from the word go this season. The other number that sticks out to me in terms of AJ's stat line from Wednesday, 38 minutes, which is a team high. And you and I talked so much about how much of an indicator that is in terms of how Frank Martin feels about someone's entire game, just trust, confidence, everything like that. And that was validated on the very last possession of the game, the most high-pressure moment when I think about 150 consecutive possessions had ended with a foul, and Arkansas has an attempt from the corner, the short three, to win the game at the buzzer, and A.J. Lawson plays great defense without fouling.
Yes.
That was the moment, and that absolutely validates Frank's decision because it's not only the 8 of 13 shooting and just the one turnover. There were one or two times when A.J. looked like he fell asleep on defense, but by and large, he looked more engaged. He was good on the glass, as we see he can be when he is engaged, and good defense without fouling when it matters. And that summed up his game as much as anything on Wednesday, I thought.
Yeah, and I think that he was helped a lot by Trey Hannibal denying the ball to Mason Jones. But you put A.J. Lawson on one of the better, now granted he was hurt, but Isaiah Joe is a very, very good player. And to hold him to what they did and, make him work for pretty much everything he got. I don't think he made a basket for like 8 straight minutes.
Yeah, shot 5 of 16 for the game.
Yeah,
Joe.
Yeah, I think
in 36 minutes.
Yeah, it was, and not a whole lot of that came in the second half. So defense has always been, I don't want to say the Achilles heel for AJ, but it's the thing that's been most inconsistent with him this season. And he's slowly starting to figure it out. You're seeing him get on ball defense a little bit better. They still have a kind of a problem guarding guards at times and letting a few guys get downhill. But, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, Trey Hannibal, man, the job he did to deny Mason Jones the ball on that final possession. That's a guy Mason Jones is a junior and Trey Hannibal's a freaking freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, and Frank talked about it on his Collyn show last night after the game, that Trey, he wanted him. He said, let's play man. Let's go fist, which is their man-to-man, and put him on. Let me guard him. And give Hannibal credit. He was outsized a little bit, but he denied the ball, and that forced the contested jumper in the corner. And A.J. Lawson, for as much grief as Frank's given him defensively this year, stepped up, got a hand in the face, and he missed.
And it's where that length comes in. You and I talked about, how the, defensive responsibilities would be distributed, and I just wondered, do you put AJ on whoever's hot because he has the length to bother those guys, even if he's not Carolina's best, most consistent defensive option? And it wasn't necessarily the case, but you see the length bothering the shot at the end of the game, and you're like, oh yeah, that's why this guy does have the highest upside in terms of being an on-ball defender for Carolina if he can put it all together and do it consistently. You already mentioned Hannibal. He was the next. Normally we're a little free-flowing with this. We made a little rundown for this because there were so many different things to talk about, and I wanted to make sure we got to all of them. So I have my goods written down, my bads, and my uglies. Second thing I wrote down on good was Trey Hannibal. He played just 16 minutes, but it was a very, very impactful 16 minutes, 4 of 7 from the field.
15 of those were in the second half.
Yeah, mostly in the second half, 11 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. You mentioned the great defense towards the end of the game, and just energy, just activity. He's the spark plug. He's the engine, the heart of this team in a lot of ways, which is weird for a guy that played 16 minutes, and that's about as much as he'll ever play. But you mentioned the defensive possession to end the game. The other play that I feel like summed up Hannibal's effort and is probably a good representation, I guess a synecdoche, if you will, of what he means to this team and how much he can, aid the potential upside of this team, is a play when Jair Bolden's driving from the left shoulder baseline. Looks like he's going to run out of bounds. There's no way he's going to get the shot up. And all of a sudden, Hannibal flashes in the paint. Credit to Jair for finding him and dropping a perfect dime, while he's being basically driven out of bounds. And Hannibal was able to elevate for the dunk. But everyone else was kind of standing around, waiting for a kick-out pass. But Hannibal is relentless. He doesn't stop moving on defense. He doesn't stop moving on offense. And it just makes everybody else better. It makes other people making plays easier.
Yeah, and I think that the play that really jumped out at me was towards the end where Arkansas is kind of making its final push. There was a missed shot on the Arkansas side, and Trey Hannibal kind of elevates to get his eyes on the rim and pull down a defensive rebound that no one else was really going for, and he pulls it down.
It's a monster rebound.
Yeah, and that was huge because if Arkansas, they're not a good offensive rebounding team, but they had guys near the basket, and if they get that, with the way fouls were being called in that game, there was a chance that you could get fouled. You foul there, and then they're going to the line, and another guy's either fouled out or has some foul trouble. So for him to be able to do a lot of what he's doing speaks volumes to his progression, speaks volume. I mean, it's like you found a boulder on the side of the road, put like springs on him and coils, and just tossed him a basketball and played. Like, it's one of those things where he's built like a damn linebacker, and he plays like it, and he just gets downhill, and he's going to make some freshman mistakes. Frank wasn't happy with him for almost getting a 10-second call that resulted in a turnover because Jermaine Couisnard bobbled the ball. But
and did have 4 turnovers in the game.
Yeah, and that's something he's going to work on, and that's something you live with being a freshman. But Trey Hannibal, every 16 minutes isn't created equal. That you could play 4 stretches of 4 or whatever, but for him to play 15 minutes in the second half, now granted foul trouble was a big part of that. Jermaine obviously had 4. But for Frank to trust him in that big of a game to run the point, it speaks volumes to how much he's grown as a player since early December.
I mean, we were talking, our conversation, I think, headed into conference play. I think it was headed into conference play. Or maybe it was before the Virginia game. I don't know. One of the early podcasts that we did here, the conversation was, is Trey Hannibal going to be a 12 to 15-minute guy by the end of the season? And you and I were both like, it doesn't really seem like he's ready to make that leap. And he's we both wanted to see it, but just did not, based on how little Frank seemed to trust him, how short his leash seemed to be. But Hannibal has just proven, I don't know if it's a matter of him practicing better or if Frank has just realized that whenever this guy is on the court under the lights, he turns it on. You just can't not put him on the floor. Now, I want to ask you, I'm a little bit weary. I don't know if you have this number right in front of you. Box minus, I think, is a good number. It's a good indicator. I would guess that Trey Hannibal did not finish with a positive plus minus because Arkansas did win the second half. He played most of his minutes in the second half. But I'm hoping that I'm going to ask you, and you're going to have it, and I'm going to be wrong because I agree with you. I felt like that was just an incredibly important 16 minutes that he played, most of them in the second half.
So I don't have box plus minus, but I do have Trey's plus minus right here in front of me. What do you think?
I would guess like -2, but only because Arkansas won the second half.
You're close. -5.
Really? Okay. All right. So
there were only 2 players. No, there were 3 players, I think, or 4 that had a sub-0 plus minus against Arkansas. Alonzo Frank -9, Jair Bolden -2, Trey Hannibal -5.
Wait, Frank -9 in 5 minutes? Whoa.
Yeah. And then Levesque -6. But Keyshawn Bryant +1, Couisnard +3, McCreary +4.
All right, so how do we reconcile these things? Because like I said, I anticipated the number to be kind of low. But we both feel like Trey Hannibal was one of the most important pieces in this victory.
That's why I like plus minus, but I like it more on a grand scale where it's like a larger sample size. So like Hannibal over his last 3 games is, when I could actually scroll over to it on my spreadsheet, Hannibal over his last 3 games is plus 18.
Okay. Well,
so you take larger chunks. He's plus 19 for the season when he plays, or plus 13 for the season when he plays. So that's kind of how you judge that. And you look at just the impact he makes and his rebound rate, his turnover rate's still a little high, but his assist rate's good. And he's a guy you want on the game, and that's why stats really don't tell you the full story sometimes.
Right. Yeah, so some of those energy plays, like you're right, the impact of that rebound that he grabbed at the end of the game, that shows up in the box score as a rebound, but it felt like a bigger moment than that.
And that defensive denial of Mason Jones is not going to come in.
That didn't show up anywhere.
It's just going to go as missed free throw or missed 3-pointer to Isaiah Joe. So the stuff he does maybe doesn't show up on the box score all the time, but the fact that he's, plus 18 in his last 3 games kind of tells you all you kind of need to know about him.
All right, so the next 2 things I have written down, I feel like we can sort of combine into one. You and I went into this game saying Carolina has a significant size advantage. You're probably going to turn the ball over, so you have to make up some of those extra possessions on the offensive glass. Now, neither of those things happened. South Carolina turned the ball over 16 times, which is, a decent amount, not a ton. It's above average. I think they have like 13 or 14 turnovers a game. So it wasn't an outrageous number, and it was actually equal with Arkansas. They both turned the ball over 16 times, so that was not a deficit that South Carolina was facing, which is good because they actually lost the offensive rebounding battle 7-5. Total rebounds were even 36-36. But South Carolina's bigs combined for 24 points. Mike Kotsar, 10 points, added 9 rebounds and assists, 2 steals, a block. That was a very nice stat line. Wildens Levesque with just an incredible stat line. I want to talk about him. I put him... Where did I put him? Okay, I put it in the ugly because it was combined with fouls, because Levesque had just a fascinating game. 8 points, 5 rebounds in 8 minutes. Wow, Wildens, what an amazingly efficient game. 8 points and 5 rebounds in 8 minutes, and fouled out in 8 minutes. Do you happen to know, off the top of your head, what the shortest time for a Carolina player to foul out is?
I do not, but my guess would be a Chris Silva game.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, too. I was wondering if Chris Silva had like a 5 and 5 or 5 and fewer than 5, but Wildens Levesque fouling out in 8 minutes is extremely impressive. But still was able to add 8 points. Jalen McCreary added another 6 and 3, so 24 points combined for South Carolina's bigs. Even though they didn't kill the offensive glass, they were able to score. They combined for 10 of 15 from the floor shooting, 5 of 9 from Mike, 3 of 3 from Wildens, and 2 of 3 from McCreary. So, like I said, the next two things I had written down were efficient scoring. South Carolina shot 51% from the floor overall, 28 of 55. And the bigs in particular scoring efficiently against Arkansas's undersized bigs. That was a huge key for this game.
Chris Silva fouled out in 8 minutes.
Oh, did he really?
Georgia's freshman year.
All right, so Wildens
and then again
in
11 minutes.
Okay.
Like 2 games later.
But Wildens is in like the upper echelon then.
Oh, yeah. This is
bottom echelon.
This is stuff of legend for Wildens.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we will always remember Wildens Levesque fouling out in 8 minutes against Arkansas. But before we get to the ugly part of that, the good part of that, again, efficient scoring in general and especially from the bigs for a team that I think you mentioned this just kind of in passing, and I don't know if you have more numbers to extrapolate here, but Carolina, not a great offensive team, especially in the half court, but it's been getting better. And like really since conference play started, it feels like it's been okay, or better than in non-con at least.
Yeah, I mean, they're not middle of the pack, but they're slightly below average, and just in terms of SEC play. It's one of those things where, like, I don't think it's a shocker that their 3 ball is actually starting to fall, and their offense is getting better because of it. So they're 9th in offensive efficiency in the conference games only. Not great. They're just slightly below average, a point below average for that. But they're 3rd in the SEC in 3-point percentage, which is really good. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think the offense is, and they're obviously getting a little bit more open court, and it helps when you're shooting the ball really well. And this is kind of the offense that I expected from South Carolina. Not great, but able to put up points when they want to. The reason their efficiency numbers are not great is because they have a lot of possessions, and sometimes you're just not going to, make every shot, and so that efficiency number goes down. But they're able to put up a lot of points. I mean, they went on the road and put up 79 points against Arkansas. Mm-hmm. You put up almost 80 points against a top 25 team. That's pretty good. So, yeah, I think that this is kind of the offense I expected. Knock down a few threes here, there, get the ball in the paint. You drive the lane and get fouled and make free throws, knock on wood, and it's kind of what I expected. Yeah.
And it wasn't an outrageous number of threes. Like, in general, they've been shooting them better, but this is sort of like some of Carolina's earlier performances where they're shooting 20% from 3 or 18% from 3. That always felt like a little bit of an outlier. It always felt like they were better.
They were getting good looks.
Yeah, right. And it was just a matter of knocking them down. And again, they've had some, 16 of 30 kind of performances. You knew that wasn't sustainable. 6 of 20, 7 of 20, 7 of 21, 8 of 22. That feels comfortable. That doesn't feel like they're
You can survive on that.
Right. You can survive on that clearly because it was good enough to beat Arkansas despite leaving 16 points at the free throw line, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But it doesn't feel like anything that, this guy's hot or this guy's hot, so it's not really sustainable. You expect it to come crashing back down. Minaya 1 of 3. That's his worst 3-point shooting performance in a couple of games. I don't remember what he was against Vanderbilt actually off the top of my head, but before that he'd really been finding his 3-point stroke. Keyshawn misses only 1. AJ hit 3 of 7. Jermaine didn't hit any. 0 of 4. 2 of 5 from Bolden. None of those numbers jump out as like outrageously efficient or like, oh, that can't happen again. Like AJ 3 of 7 versus 2 of 7, I don't know. But if Jermaine takes 4 threes, you expect him to hit 1 or 2 of them in general. Jair hitting 2 of 5 and shooting 3 of 7 overall. Like, that feels about right. And it just feels like, I guess really since Jermaine was inserted as the point guard and now that AJ has found his rhythm a little bit more and just looks a little more confident. And the other thing we forgot to mention about AJ, just while we're talking about the efficient scoring, is not only that his shot's dropping and that Carolina has found out or figured out exactly how to use him in a more off-the-ball role, but there were a couple times when, at least one time that I can remember, that the camera did not get his basket because Carolina went so quickly in transition. It was just like rebound, pass ahead to Hannibal, pass ahead to Lawson, bucket. And the camera's just like trying to catch up because he's getting out and he's attacking, which is what he did so well last year, what he didn't do for a lot of this season, and what he's doing more now. And that's those easy buckets. It's not like full transition because it's not a steal or a block, but you grab a quick rebound and you go up the court. That essentially it's transition or semi-transition or whatever you want to call it. But since that happened, since Kuznar got in there, and since Bryant's offensive efficiency started to tick upwards more towards what we expected, this offense has started to look, pretty decent.
It's passing the eye test. The numbers might not be there to wow you, but it passes the eye test, and they're looking more aggressive. They're getting to the rim compared to what they were against A&M and compared to what they were against Auburn. This is slowly rounding into form of what I expected when they're not lighting it up from three. I didn't expect them to light it up from three this year, but they're able to attack the rim with some guys. They're able to get in there and make threes at times, and they have stretches where they play really efficiently. Now they got to cut down on inefficient offense when you're turning the ball over so much, but this is kind of, they're not playing their best, but they're getting closer to it. They're trending in the right direction.
The last thing that I have written down, and then I'll get to any goods that you feel like we didn't touch on, and this is, I'm hesitant to say that it is a theme or the MO of this team, but resilience.
Yeah.
Whether it's withstanding a big run in the second half against Virginia, having to claw back into the game, being down by whatever it was, 13 or 17 against Kentucky, and then withstanding several smaller runs against Arkansas in what some people consider to be the toughest place in the conference to play, including Rupp, when they're making shots, when they're getting stops, when they're shooting a million free throws, when you can't buy a free throw. This team continues to find a way to gut it out, and it's not what I would have expected, A, from a young team, and B, from a team that wasn't resilient enough early in the season to eke out a win against Stetson or eke out a win against Boston. It looks like a veteran team. They do not shrink from the moment, and it's surprising and incredibly encouraging.
Yeah, I was just about to use that word, encouraging, where it's like, I wouldn't count this team out against anybody. That's one of those things where, yes, some teams in the conference might be more talented just from a recruiting standpoint or a veteran standpoint, but down 2 or 3 with 2 or 3 minutes to go, South Carolina's got a shot, and it's because they're young, but AJ's played a lot of minutes. Keyshawn's played a lot of minutes. Justin's played a lot of minutes. These are guys that have some experience and have been through some of the wars, and I think being close for AJ and Keyshawn last year and playing in some big games in February and early March makes you ready for this. And I think that they've shown that, to where they're not going to back down from anybody. Arkansas was a very, very good, very experienced team, and South Carolina was able to counter every run that they went on. And that is very, very encouraging, especially given the atmosphere and especially given the circumstances of that game.
Arkansas has no freshmen. That seemed wrong. You and I both fact-checked it. And they don't have any freshmen.
Yeah. And South Carolina had, I'm trying to remember who was on the court in the game, but at least 3 sophomores or younger.
Mike Kosar is the only guy that has more than a year and a half of experience on this team.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And they're finding ways to win. And they probably not, arguably their best or second best win of the season against Arkansas.
Incredibly resilient. Was there anything else good that you wanted to touch on that I didn't write down?
Is Mike Kosar on any of these lists?
I guess I kind of lumped him in with the efficient scoring.
Yeah, I just really
the big men. But let's hit on his performance a little bit more. 10 and 9, an assist, 2 steals, a block. Played 29 minutes, got his scoring tick, back up a little bit, and did what he needed to defensively. And unfortunately fouled out. I thought the 5th foul was an atrocious call, but
yeah, there were a lot of atrocious calls.
Yeah,
but that's all I want to say was that's kind of what you expect from Mike every game.
Mm-hmm.
Play really good defense.
He's a more consistent, even more than the scoring, which was up for most of the season. Obviously, the last 4 games, it was a little bit down. He was scoring 3 or 4 points a game. Got it back up to 10. The thing that has surprised me more than his scoring output has been his consistent effort rebounding, because that was never his strong suit, and he's really improved in that area this year.
And I think that it kind of shows the fact that South Carolina has a lot of different ways to beat you. Will it work every game? Probably not. But you're a smaller team. All right, cool. Like, we're going to go out, we're going to beat you going in the low post. Mike's going to score 10 points, 9 rebounds. You're Texas A&M and you want to get up and down the court and play fast or whatever. Okay, we'll go with you tit for tat and hit 16 threes.
And Mike is a versatile enough defender that he can be on the floor when you're trying to play small ball.
Yeah, and so I think this kind of shows the versatility of this team to where they can play multiple styles. They like playing faster, but if you want to slow it down and play in the half court, we got guys that can play in the half court too. Mm-hmm. And Mike's a big reason why.
Yeah, Mike and the depth. And the depth was big again this game. It has been in pretty much it's been in really every game. I throw the Auburn game in there too. Unfortunately, it was kind of working the other way in South Carolina's favor where it didn't feel like they had enough depth, but so many of these games, again, you get 14 from your bench bigs, you get 11 from Hannibal, you get 12 from Bolden. It's the depth and the ability to go in a lot of different directions. You're exactly right. It's been the difference for Carolina as they've climbed to 12-8, 4-3 in the conference, and in control of their own destiny to grab that double bye in the SEC tournament. All right, some of the bads. Jermaine Couisnard had a bad game. 5 points, 1 of 6 from the floor, 0 of 4 from three-point land, 1 rebound. He did have 4 assists, turned the ball over a couple times, played just 27 minutes. Frank wasn't super happy with his performance.
Yeah.
His worst game since moving into the role as starting point guard, but fortunately it didn't cost South Carolina. Was this a blip? Was this a tough matchup? We talked about he's had some tough matchups with other good point guards. It's basically all of them since he started.
Yeah.
Since he started starting. How worried are you about Jermaine's poor performance?
I'm not. I think this right now is the exception and not the rule. Now, if it continues, obviously things change, but it's one of those where he's playing some really good guards. He's playing in a really, really hostile environment. So that's one of those where you kind of expect him to have a freshman moment. And he had a freshman moment, and now it's the last few days, it's going to be recalibrating because then you got to go and play Missouri afterwards. So if he doesn't have a good game against Missouri or Ole Miss or whoever, then we'll worry. But right now, I don't see a reason to really think it's more than just a blip.
No, and the one thing that is still encouraging, as I mentioned, 4 rebounds to 2 turnovers, as long as that ratio is good. Because, for Jermaine, when his shot's not falling, that's one thing, but he's still at least solid defensively. And as long as he's not getting his turnover, because he does turn the ball over too much. And I was actually surprised to look after the game and see that he only had 2 turnovers because both of them, I guess I just remember both of them very specifically, and they felt bigger, and I just assumed there were some other ones in there. So good that it was only 2, but the assist-to-turnover ratio is kind of the bellwether for him because the scoring will come, the scoring will go, but the defense will be pretty consistent. As long as he can keep his playmaking up and the turnovers down, it's going to be at least okay for him. And again, it wasn't a great game, worst game since starting, still was able to play 27 minutes, which means Frank thinks that that was pretty efficient. TJ Moss, just 2 minutes, by the way. I think that has a lot to do with Hannibal. Probably more to do with Hannibal than anything else, but we know that Frank likes TJ. He trusts TJ. If he didn't feel like Jermaine was getting it done and he only felt comfortable playing Hannibal 16 minutes, normally that would have gone to Moss, those extra minutes. But I think, all in all, poor shooting performance from Couisnard, but overall, it's a pretty high standard if this is the worst game that he's had since being the starting point guard.
Yeah, and I think that as long as he's got playmaking ability, like you said, and he's kind of making some other stuff happen when his shot's not falling, you feel good about keeping him in the game. And he's so physical and so good defensively that it's hard to really – no one else on that team outside of maybe Trey Hannibal gives you that from the guard spot.
Keyshawn Bryant, 17 minutes, 4 points on 1 of 3 shooting, added 5 rebounds, a couple assists anyway, a block, 1 turnover, only a couple fouls. He got pulled after his 1 turnover in the second half, and I don't think came back in the game. I don't remember him coming back in.
Frank said he was getting – he didn't say pouty, but frustrated on the bench, and I think that kind of led to him not playing as much. Didn't want to put someone that was maybe overly emotional or frustrated kind of out there, and then you make another mistake, and then Arkansas could go on a run because of it.
Concern? No concern.
No concern right now.
No, it's just kind of weird, though, because that's a guy that Frank said, when Keyshawn comes back, this team's going to have to lean on him for his leadership. It's weird for him to be benched for, attitude, air quotes.
Yeah, it's weird, too, because you saw the frustration kind of bubble over. There were a few times where they flashed to him coming back down the court after a turnover or a missed shot. Keyshawn's yelling at somebody or trying to direct traffic, and that's what you want from a guy.
Frank loves that.
Yeah, that's what you want. But at times, Keyshawn has a tendency to kind of just freelance isn't the right word, but make a few mental mistakes. He's still trying to learn. He's so smart, but sometimes he tries maybe to do a little too much, and that makes things bad. And I think that if Trey Hannibal wasn't playing as well as he was, Keyshawn probably sees a little bit more minutes in the second half. But when you have a guy like Trey Hannibal playing the way Trey Hannibal's playing, it's hard to keep him out of the lineup.
Justin Minaya, I had this written down with a question mark next to it. 4 points, 1 of 4 from the field, 1 of 3 from three-point land. Split his free throws. He had 2 of them. 1 of 2. That's what that means, splitting them. I realized I said that confusingly. Just 2 rebounds. No other stats other than a couple of fouls. Not a great game for Minaya, who's been playing really well, really efficiently offensively. We talked about how much he raises the ceiling when your quintessential glue guy's playing well. Not a great game for him. I guess we can say in summation of these bads, the fact that Kusnar Bryant and Minaya all had
stinkers,
below average 2 bad games. And I think it's probably fair to say that they all had bad games, and Carolina was still able to win on the road like this is a good sign. But same thing with Minaya. Not too worried about it, but just not a very good game for him, not a very impactful game.
Yeah, and I think that how many fouls did he finish with?
Just 3.
2, 3?
Yeah.
That's an issue with it, but it's just one of those where he's still young to a degree, and I think that every player who's younger gets a bad game here or there, and matchups dictate that, and environment dictates that, and that's just kind of what happened to Justin. And when the shot's not falling, and you have guys like AJ and Mike and Trey who are playing well, and we keep going back to that, those are the guys that are going to eat the minutes there. And when Wildens is playing okay and fouling out in 8 minutes, but when he deserves time out there too, when Bolden played pretty solid. So I don't think it's that big of a worry right now. Now, if the trend obviously continues, then there's something to worry about. But the way that these last 2 or 3 weeks have gone, I would take those over one blip on a radar on a Wednesday night in Arkansas.
Yeah. Now, I watched this out of order, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember part of the reason he only played 27 minutes, I think he just had, because I came home from Chappelle just in time to watch the second half and then had to watch the first half later. So I feel like he had 1 foul in the first half and then picked up 2 relatively quickly in the second half and then had to sit a lot, which is I think it was something like that. So part of the reason that his minutes were down and part of the reason that his numbers overall were down. But again, all this,
they won without him.
In a win.
Yeah, like they won without him, and it's so much easier to move on from a bad performance when you go on the road and win like that.
Right.
So
and then come back home and play a Missouri team that's not very good that we're going to talk about in just a minute. The last thing that I have written down for bad, and this is another one with a question mark because it wasn't bad, but South Carolina, who's been a really good rebounding team, who's won that margin in a lot of these games, as I mentioned, even in total rebounds, had 2 more defensive rebounds, 2 fewer offensive rebounds. Not really a cause for concern because they won and because we've seen them have really good rebounding performances, but it just stuck out because they're so much bigger than Arkansas. You feel like they would have just slammed the offensive glass. Did that concern you at all?
Not really. To a degree, yes, because I expected them to go out there and just dominate the glass, and you don't. But when you take 23s, when you make, 28 of your 55 shots, there aren't that many rebounding opportunities to go around. And when you're taking a lot of jump shots, then you have less bodies in the paint to rebound. And it's not that big of a worry right now. And I think South Carolina's body of work these last 6 games in SEC, play 7 games, speak more to maybe what they are instead of just, like I said, a blip on this radar.
Anything else bad we need to touch on?
I'm sure the ugly includes fouls.
The ugly is 2 things. We'll do free throw shooting first.
Okay. Because that had a positive end to it.
Right.
Yeah.
17 of 33. Wow.
Oof. They
shot the same. I mean, it's not exactly 0.6 of a point different. And even if you round, it doesn't work because it was 51.5 from the line and 50.9 from the floor. So it's not exactly the same. Damn it.
But a percentage point. We're talking tenths of a percentage point.
They shot the same from the line as the field.
Yeah.
What?
Oof. And Frank gets so, I think he's getting tired of talking about it. They are what they are at this point. And it's a lot of young guys having to go to the line. They're just not a good free throw shooting team. And you can say all you want to about, well, they should be practicing, 100 free throws after practice. Well, they do, but it's a lot different. And you can do it with your heart rate up after practice. You could run, suicides all you want to, or whatever you call them now, gassers or whatever, until your heart's content, and then try to go shoot 100 free throws. Mm-hmm. It's a lot different when you've been playing for 30 minutes. Someone absolutely just hacks you on the way to the rim. You just gotten bodied, and then you got to go make it in front of 18,000 people. Yeah. It's a lot different.
That's true.
Do they need to be better? Yeah, they need to be better. But at this point, they are what they are. But give them credit. they started 9 of 23 and finished 17 of 33. 8 of their last 10 they made.
Including Jair hitting both of those technical free throws.
They
which,
made 6 straight.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
The 2 technical free throws felt a little bit icy.
Yes.
I guess we can give Jair a little bit of a shout out because we didn't mention him in the good. But
yeah, and then Wildens went out there and hit.
I know
those 2 right after that,
and they looked good. Like when Jalen makes his free throws, it's like, yeah. But Wildens hit him, and it's like, why doesn't he hit all of these?
I really like his shot. I know we're talking about the ugly, but I think there's a lot of potential there for what he's able to do because he's so tall and his release point is so high that it's almost unblockable.
And we've seen him hit a couple elbow jumpers throughout the season. He takes like one every other game, and it usually looks pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, I watched him in the pro, man. He would, I use air quotes, work on his 3, which is just shooting. But I mean, the form's there. Now it's just a matter of kind of refining it. But
could he be? By the end of his career, I'll never forget in that Tennessee game, Chris Silva hitting a 3 from like top of the arc over
beautiful
over.
Was that Grant Williams?
Yeah, that's his name. And outdueled Grant Williams in that game, by the way, the one that they played.
He hated playing
here in Columbia. I'm sure.
I talked to him about it.
I watched. I was watching the Celtics and the Heat the other night, and they were going up against each other, which was
He was one of those. I talked to him at the end of his career. He goes, I'm glad I don't have to really play Grant Williams twice a year now.
Yeah. Now it's going to have to be like 5 times a year.
Yeah,
or
if they're in the playoffs. Yeah,
exactly. But it started with Chris Silva being able to hit that short side corner 3. Is that a potential upside for Levesque? Maybe so.
I think
his free throws look good. And what I have heard NBA people say, scout types, is that the best indicator of consistent 3-point shooting is free throw shooting. Yeah. So if Levesque continues to, let's see, what was he had 2 of his 4, so still not good, still at just 50%. But the form looks fine. It's just a matter of getting it to go in, I guess. But the free throw shooting is atrocious. I have 3 things to say. 1, South Carolina can be a bad free throw shooting team and still shoot way better than 17 of 33. Like a bad 3-point shooting team is like
bottom
60
10
or 65.
The They're like bottom 10 in the country in free throw shooting percentage.
So if Carolina is a bad free throw shooting team, that's a significant improvement over what happened on Wednesday. Yep. Number 2, I got to give my roommate credit for this. And then I guess I will add to the idea. So South Carolina, they practice. What do they practice? 2 hours a day, like every day except for game days. And
roughly that. And they get an off day during the week.
Yeah. Okay. So Carolina pretty much knows what they're going to do on offense. They pretty much know what they're going to do on defense in terms of their offense. And yes, there's probably some stuff that they add or tweak or address in particular for whatever upcoming opponent. And yes, they can be better at offense. They can be better at defense. In all facets of it, you can always improve. Yeah. But if Carolina spends 2 hours one day working on their half-court sets, and they have a really good practice, and they improve 1%, that's pretty good. That's a very good day of practice. How much better would this team be if they spent those 2 hours literally just shooting thousands of free throws for 2 hours straight and improved like 3 to 5% on free throws?
They would be shooting 63%.
Maybe. And Carolina fans would not have had to sweat out this game on Wednesday. And Frank Martin's estimation says that Carolina has lost 4 games this year because of free throw shooting. Would Carolina be 16-4 right now?
Probably not.
Probably not. But damn it.
Fun revisionist history, yeah.
At some point, and this is what my roommate said, he was like, look, I get that free throw shooting is something you have to improve on your own, come in early or stay late or whatever.
Yeah, this isn't a coaching thing.
But at some point, like, this is such a problem for this team. Doesn't Frank Martin have to do something? Like, his job is to improve problems with the team.
Like, that's the weird thing is I think he's trying to, and in practice, he's even mentioned it where they're in like 5-on-5 up and down the court scrimmage stuff, and one of their good free throw shooters, I say good comparatively speaking.
Do they have any of those?
Yeah. Compared to one of their better free throw shooters gets fouled, he'll put someone that's not good at the free throw shooting on the line to try to get that game experience. So they're trying. It's just a team that's right now not good at free throw shooting. Do you know who there are 5 teams worse than South Carolina at free throw shooting? Arkansas Pine Bluff, UMBC.
Hey, I know them.
Yeah, Nebraska, Army, and St. Louis.
Wow. It's a murderer's row right there.
Those are the teams worse than South Carolina.
Good job, Carolina. They, no, I don't know if anyone keeps track of this. This would not even be research that's worth doing. But if South Carolina continues playing well, like they did against Arkansas, and, better for some of these guys, and they make the postseason, either NIT or NCAA tournament, I have a feeling they could be the worst free throw shooting team of all time to ever make postseason play. I feel like that is on the table.
Yeah, I think that'd be on the table.
I have one more thing to say about the free throw shooting, but it has escaped me, and I didn't write it down.
And good for them for 8 of 10 to win the game.
Yeah,
I will include that every time.
Yes.
They came in clutch when they needed to come in clutch. The game could have been over by then, but when they needed to make free throws, they made most of their free throws.
17 to 33. Now, the other part of that that's really nice for Carolina is Arkansas, which is 26 of 40.
Oh, it was bad.
Yikes. Not good. 65%.
The fact that they shot, and I'm sure we're about to touch on it, 73 free throws in a college basketball game.
57 fouls. And 33, I feel like I saw this on Twitter. It may have been you, it may have been someone else, or maybe I just made it up, that 33 fouls in a game was the most since the 2010-11 season.
I didn't come up with that stat, but that sounds right.
I don't know. Don't quote that at parties this weekend because I might be wrong, but it was way too many fouls.
The fact that they had the Kentucky game was unwatchable when they had 52. That was the Kentucky game, right?
Yeah.
They had 52 fouls combined against Kentucky. They had 52 fouls with 3 minutes to go in this game.
And added
that's
5 more.
That's un-effing watchable. It's awful. And it's not South Carolina's fault. It's not Arkansas's fault.
Nope. There were plenty of bad calls both ways. Carolina got bailed out on some calls. Arkansas got bailed out on some calls.
Yeah, and like, I saw on our message boards and our live threads and whatnot that South Carolina, the officials are in it for Arkansas. No, the officials were just dog crap to begin with.
I mean, I honestly thought they were worse for Arkansas than for South Carolina.
Yeah, I was talking about that with my roommates watching the game. We were like, South Carolina's been on the good end of a lot of these calls.
Yeah.
And I just think it's poor officiating across the board. College officiating this year has been bad.
I just feel like it's always bad. And this was like this was the low end of bad, sure. But this is exactly why an order of things that I want to watch casually. It's like European soccer, NBA, college football, NFL, tennis, maybe golf. I don't like watching college basketball, and one, it's because I just didn't grow up a big college basketball fan, so I don't have a lot of nostalgia, a lot of like history necessarily watching it. But primarily, it's because the game is so disjointed, because of all the timeouts, because of all the stoppages, because of all the fouls. 57 fouls and 50 made shots in this game. Yeah. Who wants that? Who is this for? Why do they suck on purpose, or are they just that bad? And if that's the case, why not just tell them not to call so many fouls?
Yeah. And like, it's not even like, there were a few where I'm just like, there's no point in calling a foul there.
No.
I mean, there's hand checks you're calling for some reason. Like, I get it if the guy's going out there mugging him at the half court line, but just when in doubt, swallow the damn whistle and let the kids play, because in the end, there's a reason why the NCAA tournament's so popular for a lot of different reasons. But one of the reasons is there's actual game flow.
Mm-hmm.
And the officials like to swallow their whistles a little bit more in those games. And it benefits game flow, and it makes the game a lot more watchable. But when you have these guys that go out there and start calling everything, if Jair Bolden breathes on a guy wrong, gets a foul, like, come on. Like, that's not fun for anybody.
Basketball's a beautiful sport.
Yes. Gorgeous.
It's flow. It's structure and improvisation existing, and a phenomenal harmony at its peak. And yet, in college basketball, I don't know if this is an exaggeration. This game was like about 2.5 hours. So I don't know what would happen if you were to extrapolate it out over, the standard like 3.5 or 3:45 of a football game. But it feels like in college basketball, there are more stoppages than a football game, a game in which stoppages are built into every single play.
Yes.
I don't know. I've been lazy. I apologize. I said I was going to do this yesterday on my local show on 107.5, and I still didn't do it. And
all that time on the toilet, and you still didn't do it.
I know. Well, I wasn't even on the toilet. I was just literally just laying on my floor. I just like laid on my yoga mat, and I have a space heater that's like, I don't know. How big is this?
Pretty average size.
A space heater that's like the size of my iPad. All right. I said this is going to be an e-podcast.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was going to be why. Point is, that's what I was doing. I was laying on my floor with a little space heater just pointed at my belly. So I guess I could have done it then. Point is, I didn't. The reality is, I just don't want to know. how many consecutive possessions.
2.5 hours for a basketball game is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and how many consecutive possessions had a foul. And
how many up and downs did you get without at least one stoppage in play?
I can only think of one or two.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it was that many.
And give them credit, they didn't call a foul in the last possession.
Which was stunning.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
If you're going to swallow the whistles at certain points in the game, just swallow the whistles, period.
Yeah, so
you know?
if you feel like there need to be a certain number of fouls called, which is like extremely problematic, that's like cops that are like, got to hit our quota, so you were going 1 over, so here's your speeding ticket.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get a speeding ticket. Sorry, I'm not calling out cops. Y'all do a great job and stuff, but don't give me a ticket for going 1 over or 5 over or whatever. Please. And thank you. I might edit this out. Point is, we talked about this on Tuesday, I think, watching, was it Tuesday? I don't remember. You and I talked about watching the North Carolina NC State game.
It was awesome.
It was great. It was very pleasant. There was flow. The drama that's like built into the course of a free flowing basketball game. You allow that to thrive. You allow it to blossom. It's great to watch. There's drama. There's tension and release in every possession, and the ebbs and flows, and the little runs, and transition opportunities and everything. And that's just completely taken out of the game when you call fouls like this. But in that game, it's like there were like, I think we were at the under 12. Neither team was in the bonus yet. And it's like, okay, if someone gets a little bit handsy, like you can call a foul just to if you're an official and you feel like breaking up the game, because like it hasn't been that many, but just, I don't know. I don't even agree with that. But point is, when you're in a game where there have already been so many fouls called, I feel like you should stop calling the ticky-tack bullshit, because nobody wants to see that. Nobody likes that. That is not for anybody. It's not for the benefit of the players. It's not for the benefit of the viewers or the coaches or the game or anything. And the other part of it is, because you only get 5 fouls in college basketball, which makes sense based on math and things like that, you don't want to see all the best players fouling out of a game. Like, I've been a huge proponent, and I can't remember if they actually changed the rule or not, but in the NBA, if you go into overtime, I feel like you should get another foul. Because it sucks when you're watching the end of a game and LeBron James or, Pascal Siakam or whomever, like fouls out in the last minute of a close game, and then it goes to overtime, and you have to watch a whole overtime period without either team having their best player. Right. It's like, no. I'm watching this because I want to watch the best players. And yes, there should be penalties, and you shouldn't be able to just foul unlimitedly, but you want to see the best players. You want to see flow. You want to see rhythm. And it's almost like college basketball officials either don't like basketball or have never watched basketball or want to make the games all about themselves.
I have never met a person that goes to a basketball game to watch free throws, ever. And I can, from the texts I receive and the people I talk to after games and whatever, no one was like, 73 free throws, man. Did you see that? That was awesome. No, it was, they shot 70 freaking free throws. No one needs that in a game. Teams should be shooting between 20 and 30, and that's about it. But the officials, and I don't know if they want to make it all about themselves or whatever, but like, come on, guys, like, you're better than that. And I don't want to go into a game and have it last 2.5 hours and watch 73 free throws. And teams only make 40 of them.
Right. Yeah, that was the other part. Is the free throw shooting being so ugly just compounded how unpleasant the game was to watch. I can't remember if I even started the podcast like this or if you and I were just talking about it walking up here. It was an exciting game for Carolina, but it was not fun to watch.
No.
I hated pretty much every second of watching this game because it was just watching fouls and free throws. And frankly, I wish that the game had been at 7 so that I had missed almost the entire thing so that I could have watched the whole thing on replay, because it's really easy to fast forward through the free throws and through the fouls and the stoppages, and I could have watched the whole game in like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
But instead I had to sit through the whole damn thing in real time. And I hate college basketball officials, and I want to like college basketball, but they make it so hard because I want to see baskets, I want to see defense, I want to see flow, I want to see physicality. Like, college basketball is not a contact sport.
No, at this point, no. And it's frustrating because in the SEC, being physical kind of comes with the nature of the thing. This is the SEC. It's a football conference, and the football kind of trickles over into basketball and trickles over into baseball to a degree, and almost every other sport. So it's more physical than an ACC or a Big 10 or a Big 12, where it's more flashy and more, wide open, spread out, where you're going to get guys that bang down low and drive to the rim and finish. And I don't see this being a problem. I don't watch a lot of other outside of the SEC, but this is a huge problem in the SEC. It's just not fun to watch half the damn time. and that's frustrating.
We're recording this Friday morning, so I think you and I have both cooled off a little bit from just the general frustration. If we had recorded this yesterday afternoon, I would have been even hotter. And if we had just hopped on the mics right after the game Wednesday, oh man, this would have been like a super e-podcast. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Wes is really annoying about it, and he wants me to just cut it out, and like sometimes I bleep it. He hates when I say the fuck word, and I don't know why he hates that. That's why people listen to podcasts. They want to hear the fuck word.
Yeah.
So I didn't say that as much as I did during that tirade about officiating and about fouls being called and things like that. So I apologize if you were looking forward to that, but I've cooled off a little bit. It's Monday morning. I've gotten
I didn't know we were dropping F-bombs here.
Huh?
So if I knew we were dropping F-bombs.
Fuck bombs?
Yeah.
I like calling it the fuck word instead of the F word. Yeah, I guess we can. I mean, it's a podcast. We'll put an E label on it. And I'll even put it in the description because this is not normally an E podcast. We're normally E for everyone. This is now E for explicit. We're not normally like that. But I said on Twitter that it was going to be the case. It wasn't for the reasons that I thought it was going to be.
Now we're just dropping fuck to just drop fuck at this point.
Now we're just saying the fuck word. All right, now you can turn the volume back up if your kids are in the car.
Yeah.
We're at actually I don't know. We're like around the hour mark, so turn the volume back up. We're done using the fuck word. Yeah. That's it for the ugly. That pretty much does it, I think, for the Arkansas game. Did you have any other thoughts, anything that we should touch on?
No, good win.
Great win. Great win. So South Carolina jumped 13 spots in the net from 88 to 75. They're now almost at the point, and I can't remember exactly what the cutoff is, so you'll have to tell me exactly and correct me because I'm sure I'm wrong. Carolina's almost at the point where if somebody wins in the Colonial Life Arena, it would be a quad one win. Because isn't a road win like in the top 70?
It'll be a quad one win, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So like
75
if Ole Miss came in, it wouldn't because South Carolina would probably drop. But 1 through 75 is
75?
On the road is a quad one win.
South Carolina is now road quad one win territory. Kind of an interesting way to think about it, and hopefully we don't have to have that conversation in terms of other teams beating Carolina and getting that quad one win. But good job. Way to jump 13 spots in the net. The next team that's coming to Colonial Life Arena is actually Missouri, so they'll have the first chance to grab a quad one win at the Colonial Life Arena. Missouri's not very good. They've had a weird season, though, so they have
2 really good wins.
Yeah, they beat Florida to start SEC play. They're 2-5 in conference. Yeah, by 16, 91-75. Was that the final score? Yeah. So they won by 16. They're just 2-5 in conference play, though. They're 10-10 overall.
They also beat Illinois, who's a tournament team.
They beat Illinois. They beat Florida. They beat Georgia and came back from down 20.
Yeah.
I was really disappointed because that was the same night that Ole Miss blew a 19-point lead, and I just wish they had been up by 20 so that Auburn could have completed a 20-point comeback, so there could have been 2 20-point comebacks.
Yeah, Georgia was up 59-39 with 13 and a half minutes to go in the game.
I changed the channel. I turned over to that Auburn game.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, well, this is decided. And then all of a sudden, Missouri comes roaring back. And then the other teams they've lost, like they lost at Mississippi State. That's a fine loss. They lost at Alabama. That's a fine loss. They lost at Kentucky. That's a fine loss. They lost to Tennessee. Oh, by the way, that Florida game was third for them in SEC play, not to start it. That was my bad.
Still kicked the crap out of them.
Yeah, but they have good losses. They have a good win. The only loss that sticks out as kind of weird is the Texas A&M loss at home. That was only by 2 points. And I guess you can say Tennessee a little bit. That's by 10. What do you make of this Missouri team? Yeah, that's kind of where I am.
They've been decent. They're very similar to South Carolina in some regard, to where you kind of don't know what you're going to get night in and night out. They are very mediocre offensively, kind of middle of the road. Pretty okay defensively, which is what South Carolina is. They play slower. They're not a good shooting team. They're really not a good shooting team in SEC play, outside of 3 points. Really good free throw shooting team, though.
Mm-hmm.
But very slow. Bottom 4 teams in both offensive and defensive efficiency since conference play started in SEC play. Turn the ball over a lot, force a lot of turnovers. Just kind of one of those teams that they're opportunistic. If they get enough opportunity, they can beat you. But if they don't, then it's going to be a struggle.
You always have the good advanced analytics. These are just some basic counting stats that I pulled from the SEC website yesterday. Missouri's 12th in points, 13th. These are all in the conference, obviously. 12th in the conference in points, 13th in field goal percentage, 9th in three-point percentage, tied with Carolina and Arkansas. 3rd in free throw percentage. You mentioned that's a really good stat. More on that in just a minute. 13th in defensive rebounding. 3rd in turnovers per game, meaning they turn it over a lot. Tied for 12th in assists per game, and just 12th in blocks per game in the conference. So 2-5 and 10-10 sounds right, but then they beat Florida by 16. And then they came back from, Georgia's not a good team, but, I mean, to come back from down 20 against anybody is pretty impressive.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're South Carolina, you know this is a team that can go in there and beat you. But there are a lot of things that are working in South Carolina's favor here, just in terms of South Carolina's been a good three-point shooting team in SEC play, and Missouri's not been a very good three-point defense. They're the worst in the SEC since conference play started in three-point percentage against, 12th in two-point percentage against, so they don't protect the paint that well. And teams are weirdly shooting very well free throw-wise against them. Now, that has nothing to do with Missouri, but
they're a terrible free throw shooting defensive team.
yeah, like I love that stat where it's like free throw shooting against. And it's like, who cares? Like, it's just no matter who you're
Maybe
playing.
that just like if it were at versus home, like maybe
different, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's a dumb stat.
They force. It's a weird team that they find kind of weird ways to win, and this is a team that can beat South Carolina. It's the SEC. Really, anybody can beat anyone unless your name's Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
but
who hold the record now? Right? They tied the record with South Carolina, and then they have the record now after Wednesday.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a team that turns the ball over a lot, forces a lot of turnovers, and like I said, if they're going to get a lot of opportunities, they look probably pretty good. And if they don't, and South Carolina protects the ball, then it's less so.
Roadmap for Missouri to upset South Carolina, because this is not only the second time in conference play that South Carolina will enter a conference game as a favorite. If you foul Missouri 33 times, they're going to make you pay. I mentioned they're third.
They will not go 20 for 40 from the line.
No, they won't. Yeah, no, seriously. They're third in free throw percentage, including they hit 31 of 31 free throws in a game earlier this season, which I think was a record.
They're good.
And then they hit their first 23 free throws in the next game, and I know for a fact that that's a record. 54 of 54 straight free throws was a record. So don't foul Missouri because they will make their free throws. They will, where basically Carolina and Arkansas were even. Now, Arkansas shot 65%. They made 26 of 40. Carolina was only 17 of 33, so not exactly even. But point is, both teams left a ton of points at the line, and so it didn't overly hurt either team. And in fact, it hurt Carolina more, but, splitting hairs here. Missouri, that's one place where they can make up a talent deficit, like a shooting deficit. Is not necessarily going to be extra possessions, but they're going to get all of their freebies that you give them, so don't give them a lot of freebies.
Yeah, they play on the perimeter a lot, too. That I think, I'm looking at the stat, 36.2% of their points in conference play have come from three-pointers, which is best in the league. So
Drew Smith is kind of the bellwether for them. He's only scoring about 12 points a game. He's their leading scorer, which kind of tells you everything that you need to know. But you look at, I'm just going to go through the last couple games. He scored 16 in the win against Georgia, 2 points in the loss against West Virginia. And by the way, that was 2 points in 30 minutes. 18 points in a close loss to A&M, 18 points in a kind of lopsided loss to Alabama. That's the one that kind of sticks out. But they lost by almost 30 to Mississippi State. He scored just 2. He scored 22 in the win against Florida, just 6 in the loss against Tennessee, just 11 in the loss against Kentucky. Against Illinois, the team that you mentioned they beat, that's a good win for them, 19 points. So if he's scoring like 15+, they're going to be in the game. Otherwise, he's not. And for Carolina, Jermaine Couisnard's a pretty good defender. Yeah. Trey Hannibal getting more minutes. You feel pretty good about that. And AJ looking more locked in than ever. I feel like Carolina, I think that's a matchup that definitely favors them. And you say, what do you do to shut Missouri down? Don't let Drew Smith go for 18 or 22, because as he goes, so the team goes. Carolina has enough defensive options to throw at him. Yeah. And, I mean, like Mason Jones had an unbelievable game, but Isaiah Joe just, 5 of 15 or 5 of 14 from the floor. Ashton Hagens had a pretty poor game against him. Saban Lee also didn't shoot very well. Carolina does a pretty good job. It's weird. Like their defense against point guards hasn't been great this year, but they've at least made those guys work for shots. Right. Andrew Nembhard being like the really notable exception, but
that's
other than that,
NBA player, dude.
Right?
I mean, that's
So you feel like that's an okay defensive matchup for Carolina?
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see who gets him, because Xavier Pinson's obviously a guy that has been there and done that. I want to say he's like a junior or senior, sophomore. Never mind. But this team's kind of starting point guard to a degree and plays a lot of minutes. So it will be interesting to see who gets him and then who gets Drew, obviously. So I think you're probably going to put Jermaine on Pinson.
And let AJ take Drew.
And then let AJ take Drew Smith. Or if you're playing Trey, and you could play Trey Hannibal and Jermaine Couisnard at the same time and put Hannibal on Pinson and Couisnard on Smith, or vice versa. And let it work. So
yeah, and Smith is a little bit bigger, so it makes sense to put the bigger AJ on him. They're about the same height. I think they're both 6'3", but Smith has got another 20 pounds on him.
30 pounds listed.
Yeah.
Penson's 170, Drew Smith's 203.
Wow. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see because they kind of split minutes at the point guard. Smith plays a lot more minutes, obviously, at the shooting guard spot, but their most frequent lineup over the last 5 games is Smith at the point guard spot and Pearson coming off the bench. So will be interesting to see how that works. They play on the court at the same time, but when Smith and Pearson are on the court together, it will be very, very intriguing to see who gets what matchup in that regard.
If Carolina does what they did against Arkansas, they will win comfortably, and that's a pretty good sign. Yeah. Again, given that Jermaine didn't play very well, Keyshawn didn't play very well, Justin didn't play very well. The one thing that you say, you just always watch out for whenever you have a big win, an emotional win, a long game, tiring win on the road.
They didn't get home till like 2:30.
Yeah, long road trip. You worry about a little bit of a slow start, maybe some tired legs, but only one Gamecock played more than 30 minutes. That was AJ. The next highest was Mike. Mania played 27. Bryant played 17. Kushnard played 27. Frink played 5. Levesque played 8. McCreary 13. Hannibal 16. Bolden 18. So a nice even distribution of minutes there. So hopefully you don't see that tired of legs. But again, an emotional win. We've seen South Carolina have some real bad hangover games this year. I think it's fair to say. With that being said, is it time for the reverse jinx? Who will buoy a potentially lackluster performance from South Carolina? I'm not expecting it to be lackluster, but I just wouldn't be surprised if that were the case.
Knowing anything about South Carolina, they'll pull off this. They pulled off the Arkansas win, and then we'll come back and be down like 10 at halftime.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. Yeah,
just one of those where like I've covered I've been around South Carolina for a very long time. Covered them now for 6 years. I've kind of it's in South Carolina's nature. Do I think they win this game? If I was going to put money on it for entertainment purposes only, sure, I think they win this game, but it's going to be close.
They have a 66% chance to win. They only had a 15% chance to win against Arkansas. That number, by and large, doesn't really affect me. I had people, I think it was
pretty consistent, 65%. So.
Yeah. Those are normally pretty similar.
Yeah.
I had people both on my local show and I think maybe on the message boards too saying before the Vanderbilt game, wouldn't it all surprise me to see Carolina lose to Vanderbilt and then go on the road to beat Arkansas because, like we're saying, that's sort of what this team does. Wouldn't surprise me if it were, kind of the same, but on the other side, it's like, oh, you go beat Arkansas and then you lose to a Missouri team that's, again, not good, 10-10, but has at least shown the flashes of beating a team.
And you need to go out and win this game because it just helps with momentum. You can't stomach it, but you could stomach a loss on the road at Ole Miss a little bit easier because it weighs a little bit better in the net when you lose on the road compared to at home. So win your games at home is what I'm saying.
And again, we started the podcast by saying this, and we'll kind of wrap up by saying this. Carolina, for the first time in the 2019-20 college basketball season, is ahead of schedule. They're ahead of where they needed to be. Don't take that as an opportunity.
This is a crossroads. This is a crossroads.
It's a crossroads, and Carolina can either, like you're saying, not like waste the opportunity, but they can either get back to where you're scratching and clawing every single game, or they can continue to play as front runners in this Missouri game. This Missouri game, I think, will go a long way to determining that. This has more upset potential. Carolina's going to be favored the next 3 games. And if they're going to lose any of those 3, I would say it's this Missouri game, even more than Ole Miss on the road, and then you get Georgia back at home, just because you're coming off the Arkansas game and you're at home and it's possible for some complacency to set in. That is leading me directly to my reverse jinx. Do you have yours ready, or do you need a minute?
I think I got mine.
Okay.
You want to 3-2-1 it?
Yeah, we'll 3-2-1 it.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, Justin Mania. Okay, cool. So thinking the same thing, taking one guy from the bad category. For me, this feels like maybe AJ is like, Kushnard has another okay game. Maybe Mike gets into foul trouble. I'm just making up a lot of scenarios. But point is, this feels like glue guy saying, all right, come on, guys. Like, I know we just had a big win, but like, let's get our act together and actually win this game. That's kind of what Justin does. Come back from a little bit of a poor offensive performance, poor all-around performance on Wednesday. Bounce back, have another like 15-9 kind of game.
With Keyshawn, I think this game's going to be one where you've seen South Carolina at times kind of get off to a slow start. I think this game's going to be close in the second half. Please don't at me at Chris Clark GC if
GC Chris Clark.
GC Chris Clark if I am wrong. But
I love his involvement in this podcast.
Yeah. But if it's close, I think South Carolina is going to need some momentum kind of plays. And you saw that against, I think it was Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
He had a few like putback dunks, kind of stopped Kentucky's run, started a run for South Carolina, changed momentum. You're going to probably need that in this kind of game where the atmosphere, it should be a pretty damn good crowd, I think.
I hope so. 3:30 on a Saturday.
3:30 on a Saturday.
Super Bowl.
Before the Super Bowl. There's no other real event going on in town. The football newcomers are going to be introduced at halftime. So
right. Yeah,
big,
Muschamp's going to be there.
Big recruiting weekend for that one kid that's expected to sign.
Is he expected to sign anymore?
I'm going to let Angry Tweet GC Chris Clark and Westman.
Yeah.
So it's a huge moment, and I say that to say the crowd's going to be really good, and Keyshawn's going to need to have a big game to kind of get this crowd into it and provide some athleticism that I don't think Missouri can necessarily combat.
No. If Carolina is looking for energy, if they're looking for life and something to get them going, I'm going more for just like Justin Minaya is going to keep everyone afloat. But I now that you've said Brian, I kind of like that because he's just such an energy player anyway. If anyone can get the Colonial Life Arena on their feet like that, it's him with a putback dunk, steal, dunk in transition, something like that. And if we want to play the tired legs, long game, long travel, I mean, not like short week, but you get back Thursday morning, you probably have practice Thursday and then like a walkthrough Friday and then game Saturday. If you want to play the tired legs angle, Keyshawn's not going to have those. He only played 17 minutes on Wednesday. So be fresh, dunk on some fools, get on SportsCenter. It's been a while since he's made the top 10, probably a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So
it feels long for him.
I know. Yeah. I felt like last year he was pretty much every week. I still think he's the best dunker in the SEC, even though he hasn't had as many highlight
reels. How cool would
reels.
that be if we had like a SEC dunk contest?
They need to. Well, so I was lamenting this last year. I said, why is there not a college dunk contest? Because Keyshawn should be in it.
There is one,
and
though.
somebody said that. I've never seen it. I've never heard of it.
It's like right after like the Final Four. It's so like not well put together.
Yeah, that's a shame.
But
I would love that.
Yeah, because they don't really get like big names in it. But yeah, it's pretty fun.
Well, there just aren't that many big names in college basketball, which is part of the problem, especially this year.
I would love to see a media not dunk contest because I don't think there's anyone in the media that can dunk.
7 foot rim.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lower it to 8 and we'll see what happens. But
I can almost dunk on 10. If I were 5'11", I could dunk on 10.
I'm 6'2" and can't dunk at all. We did after an availability or something. Oh, the freshman availability for men's basketball. We tried shooting free throws in the practice gym. Oh, it did not go
I've never shot on a real basket like that, but I've heard that something about the backboard being clear kind of throws off your depth perception and makes it harder, or just harder to get used to when you're used to looking at a solid.
And I'm
backdrop.
not good at basket. All right, you know what? We'll take that. It's a very hard backboard to shoot on. It's not about my talent.
Yeah, you're about to talk about how trash you were at basketball.
Yeah,
which is fine because I am too. But.
Oh, it's one I'm always the guy that I grew up the chunky kid, and I'm still kind of the chunky kid. But that was my thing was just go stand under the rim. You're tall, haul in some rebounds, kick out. That was my thing. But I would love to see a media combine.
Yeah, I want to do something like that. I've talked about it with some of the folks at the station over here at 107.5 as we sit here in the 107.5 The Game podcast studio about getting something like that together before sports. We do a fun opening day thing for baseball, but we're mostly just at the park. I would love for opening day for baseball, take some BP. Opening day for basketball, have like a media pickup game, like 5v5, just do half court or something like that. And then for football, do kind of combine events, have have a 40 and have a punt, pass, and kick or something like that. I think that would be a blast.
There's rumblings of, I don't know if I can talk about it, but media BP.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
who knows?
Would you crush that?
No.
You seem like a baseball player.
No, I just. No.
Were you not an awesome first baseman back in the day?
No. I was a lefty. I gave up baseball very early in my life. Because I'm a lefty, and shocker, in Little League, guys don't know how to throw to lefties, so my average was absolute trash. My on-base percentage, great. So I kept getting beamed.
Yeah. See, I didn't know you were a lefty. That's great news. I'm also a lefty.
Okay.
That's why this podcast has been so easy.
Yeah. No, I was never good. I played football for a little bit growing up, but the only time that I've ever really hit since giving it up was the Bev Smith challenge. I did that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was at the baseball facility earlier that day doing an interview for, I think it was that oral history on the 2010, 2011 thing.
Which was great.
And,
Y'all read that if you haven't.
yeah. And Stuart Lake, I ran into him and he tossed me a few like underhand in the batting cages.
Nice.
Which was awesome.
That's cool.
The funniest part was Skylar Meade coming in and looking at me like, the hell are you doing, bud? Like, that was the funniest part of that entire situation.
That's great. Well, yeah, hopefully we'll get some media stuff and maybe
let's do a pickup thing. I think Kerry Rich mentioned it.
Really?
Yeah.
He
was trying to get it. So if you see Kerry, kind of
I'll say something to him.
Put the bug
I
in
really
his
think
ear.
that would be a lot of fun.
Put the bug in his ear, yeah.
I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Me and Mike Uva have talked about it a little bit too.
Yeah.
So put the bug.
I saw him. He sat a couple rows in front of me at Dave Chappelle. I didn't get a chance to talk to him because
boom.
We were scrambling out. But
yeah. Just boom.
Just boo him. All right, that'll do it for us. We will be back hopefully on Tuesday, barring any additional gastrointestinal distress on my part, which can't be ruled out because I'm about to pig out on the Super Bowl because this is the first time I can eat sugar and
drinking
booze since December 31st. So no promises, but we plan to be back on Tuesday. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to the Hard Fowl and everything else on the Gamecock Central Podcast Network. For Collyn, I'm Pearson. Y'all enjoy the Super Bowl. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.